Welcome to the Flourish Frequency, the show where we activate and amplify the frequencies of success, joy, and abundance. I'm your host, Beth Larson, a high-performance and quantum success coach. If you're ready to ditch the hard hustle and embrace a more effortless flow, then this is the show for you. Together, we'll tap into quantum thinking, harness the laws of the universe, and unlock the secrets to living a life of more. More joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. No more simply surviving, we're going beyond thriving. It's time to flourish. The Flourish Frequency Show starts now. And I am your host, Beth Larson, and today we are talking about one of my very favorite topics, decision, and the two magic words that move you forward, which would be, I've decided. Now, what we're talking about here today is not about decision-making strategies. It's not about how to make the perfect decision. It's about the power of deciding. Napoleon Hill wrote about this, actually. He devoted an entire chapter of Think and Grow Rich to decision-making. Now, if you're not familiar with Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon was contracted by Andrew Carnegie at the turn of the century to interview all the most successful men at that time. No women, of course, on that list at the time, but that was his mission, was to interview the most successful people and to create the identity or the list of the things, the commonalities, the common themes that made them successful. And decision-making was one of them, right? And he observed that the most successful people tended to make decisions very quickly, and then they were slow to change their mind, if ever. Whereas on the flip side of things, people who struggled tended to take a very long time to make up their mind, and then they would second guess themselves constantly. They would change their minds frequently. Now, there's an important distinction here because the most successful people weren't just being impulsive, right? The most successful people were men who had a deep sense of trust in themselves. Not that they trusted that they were always right, but they trusted in their ability to lead themselves, no matter what. And what they all knew for sure was that until they made a decision, nothing changed. Nothing had direction. Decision creates direction. So take the words, I've decided, and just feel into those words for a moment. Try them on. Say it out loud for yourself. If you're listening here with me, just say it out loud. I've decided. When you say those words out loud, how does it feel for you in your body? Just feel into that. And then say, I'm not sure, or I don't know. Say them out loud. Can you feel that shift for yourself internally? Just saying the words alone creates an energetic shift. I've decided feels grounded, right? The energy is inside of you. There's a certainty and it's very grounding. I'm not sure or I don't know has the energy outside of you because it is. You're outsourcing your decision-making to things outside of you. Now, the interesting thing is the word decision comes from the Latin. I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, but decidere, I believe is how it's said. I'm not a Latin major, but the meaning of the word is to cut off. A decision cuts off all other options once you've made it. So it's kind of like when the Spanish explorer Cortez set off to conquer the Aztec Empire. When he did that, he ordered his men to burn the boats. He did this to ground his men. Now, he was quite literally grounding them. They couldn't get back on a boat and go anywhere. They couldn't retreat. So he was literally grounding them. They were forced to move forward, and their only choices would be victory or death. Today, the idiom means eliminating all of your backup plans, all your escape routes, so that you can ensure complete focus and dedication towards your goal. I think one of the greatest things that I've learned in my own personal life, and this may sound controversial to some people out there, but one of the greatest lessons I've learned is to stop making a plan B. I used to always have a plan B, sometimes a C and a D. I used to pride myself actually on being proactive until I realized that every moment that I spent being proactive was actually diverting my attention from being preactive, that I was actually sending energy and focus in the direction of what I didn't want versus going all in on what I did want. And there was one thing that needed to happen for me to be able to do that and to continue to do that, quite honestly. I had to develop trust, trust in myself, but more importantly, trust in something greater than myself, trust in God, the creator, the universe, source. I could talk all I wanted about having faith, but if it was conditional on whether everything looked exactly how I thought it should look, then I really didn't have faith and I didn't trust. I had to surrender the need for my plan A to actualize and trust that it was going to be my plan A or something even better, something more than I could even imagine. Now, that brings me to another idea here, and that is the decisions that we're making beneath our decisions. There's a quote that's largely attributed to Albert Einstein, although there is some question as to whether or not he actually said it. But whoever said it, it's one that hit me so profoundly. And it's been in my email signature, I think, for like the last 10 years. And that is that the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. Now, that is what I would call a governing decision. It's a decision beneath all other decisions. Before you make any decision in your life, whether it's business decisions or money decisions or relationship decisions, career decisions, the question that you want to ask yourself underneath it and the decision that you get to make underneath it is, what have I decided about how life works? What have I decided about what's possible for me? What have I decided about myself? If we look at this through a hostile universe lens, if you fundamentally experience life as hostile, then uncertainty is going to feel dangerous. You're going to want to know more information and constantly more information before you ever take a step forward, before you take a movement. You're going to want guarantees for things in life. You're going to interpret resistance as a sign to stop. If you live in a hostile universe, a delay can feel like rejection for you, or somebody questioning you can make you question yourself. And a problem can quickly become the thought or the belief that you made the wrong decision, right? When you're living in a hostile universe, you're not just being discerning, you're constantly scanning for what could go wrong. And that makes decision making so much harder when you're doing that, because the real requirement for you is I'll decide when I know it's safe. And the thing of it is that most meaningful decisions don't come with that guarantee, not the big ones that we want to make in our lives. So if we choose instead to look through the lens of a friendly universe, and let me just clarify something here, because I think this part is important, that doesn't mean that nothing bad ever happens. It doesn't mean that everybody is trustworthy. It doesn't mean that risks aren't real. It doesn't mean that evidence doesn't matter. And it doesn't mean that everything always works out the way that you want it to, exactly the way you want it to. A friendly universe simply means that you are participating with life, that you are co-creating with life, and that you can make a move and you can see what happens. You can get feedback and information from the universe and you can respond. It means you don't need to know the entire road first. You can to take an action, to take a step forward. The trust isn't that everything is going to work out exactly the way you want it to. The trust is that whatever happens, you trust your capacity to meet it. And that's a really big distinction. Your safety isn't dependent on correctly predicting your future, right? You trust that you can pay attention, you trust that you can respond, and you trust that you can adjust. And I think with this part of the conversation is that there's another governing decision, one that has served me greatly, one that I offer up to all of my clients when I'm working with them, and one that I choose over and over and over again. I've decided that everything always happens for me, for my greater growth and evolution. And notice that I said that I've decided. I didn't say that I believed it, because initially I did not believe that. Initially, when I started saying that, I didn't have the belief, I didn't have the trust in it, but I was deciding it and I was choosing it over and over and over again. As soon as I decided that, I burned my boats. It forced me to look at everything from a different lens, from a different perspective, from a different paradigm. I never again asked, why is this happening to me? Right? The question is always, and from a place of deep curiosity, not from a place of trying to figure it out. I am asking the question, why is this happening for me? Because I've decided that I live in a friendly universe and that this lifetime is a journey and that it will have ups and downs. That's part of life. That's the law of rhythm at play. But the downs will have a purpose, and I can use the downs to create even greater ups in my life. I think one of the most profound books that I ever read was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I've probably talked about this on the show before because it's had such a deep impact on me. Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist. He was a neurologist, and he was also a Holocaust survivor. During World War II, he was imprisoned in several Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And it was in Auschwitz where he lost his parents, his brother, and his pregnant wife. Now, that would destroy most people. But after the war, he wrote his famous book that was detailing his camp experiences. And he argued that humans can endure immense suffering if their lives have a sense of purpose. And there was something that he wrote, there's many quotes from that book, but one in particular has had a lasting impact on me. And that's that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. That's decision. It's a choice. And that was a choice that he made. And it's a decision because of that decision that he made that he's been able to have such a profound impact on so many more people in his life. And it continues to expand. You know, here I am sharing that message. How many more people will hear that message that hadn't heard it before? That it might actually open up their world to different experiences. It's a decision we all get to make. Now, the power is in the decision. You are the decision maker. The question is, are you owning that? We often give the power to decide away way more often than we realize. Every time that we need someone else's opinion, there's a difference between getting input and giving away authority. So let me just make that distinction clear. Somebody can give you information and advice and perspective, but ultimately you're the one who has to decide. You're the one who has to own the decision. But we give away the power when we give it to things outside of us, when we give it, most importantly, to our current circumstances. Now, the most blatant example of this is always in the form of time and money, right? It's one of the most obvious ways that we give away our power and that we give away our decision making. We tend to hand over that authority very quickly. Every time we look at the bank account and say something like, I can't, or we look at the calendar and say there's no time. Your current bank balance is a circumstance. Your current calendar is a circumstance, and neither one of them should have the power to make the decisions for you. Now, I'm not saying that money isn't real. I'm not saying your bank account situation isn't real. It's your current reality. Your calendar right now is your current reality. I say current because it's ever changing. And in any moment, when you start to take the decision power back and you make different decisions, that current reality will change along with the decisions that you're making. So I'm not saying ignore your current circumstances, but you have to decide on what you're going to focus on. Are you going to continue to focus on your current circumstances? That's a decision that you are making that you may not realize you're making. Or are you going to make a decision on what you desire and where you're going, and then allow the decision to create the direction and the orientation for you? The issue that comes up here is the order in which we're making decisions, right? If you're saying when the money is there, then I'll decide. Or when I have time, then I'll decide. You need to flip that, right? I invite you to flip that. At first, I decide, and then the decision informs the next steps. If I've decided already that I want to do something, or I want to have something, I want to buy something, then what needs to happen financially? What needs to change? What needs to change on my calendar? What do I need to say no to so I can say yes to something that I've decided to? What am I saying yes to on my calendar that I actually am not interested in, but I'm doing it because I gave the decision making outside of me? What needs to be created? What needs to move? What needs to become a priority? Nothing changes until you take that decision-making power back. So remember this, don't ask your current circumstances for permission to decide. Your current circumstances show you what exists now, but you decide and something profound happens. Money and time will have a reason to show up for you. And in that decision, you open yourself up to seeing things that you didn't see before, other solutions, other opportunities. You'll hear things, conversations that you weren't hearing before, simply because you've made a decision and now your brain is going around searching to orient around that decision that you've made. If the decision is around your current circumstance and your current circumstance is not enough, whether that's time or money, and you haven't made any other decision, then your brain is going around searching to orient around the current decision that you've made, which, again, you've outsourced that decision. You've outsourced the power. So you're making a decision, but you're making it unintentionally. You're making it unconsciously. You've got to pull that decision-making power back in. And indecision is still a decision. Indecision is a decision to stay stuck, to stay where you are. And I'm deciding is actually not the same as I've decided. We can sometimes treat that indecision like it's neutral, but it's not. If you've decided, or I should say this, if you're deciding whether to leave a relationship or leave a company or leave a situation that's not actually working for you, but you haven't actually decided, then guess what? You're staying. If you're deciding whether to begin a project or to buy a course or to take a program, if you're deciding whether to begin and you don't actually decide, you're not beginning. If you're deciding whether to change something and you don't decide, the current pattern continues. So know that indecision is a decision to continue with what already is. Now, that might actually be the right choice for you. I've decided I'm not changing this right now. I've decided that I'm happy where I am right now. That's totally valid. But notice the difference between that and I can't decide. One is choice and one gives the power away. Now let's talk about the role of desire and decision and how they work together. Okay, I said before that decision gives direction, but I actually am skipping a step there. It's actually desire that gives you the direction. Decision is what puts it into play. It's what gives the desire somewhere to go. The question I would have is, how often are you cutting off the desire in the process? Because before there's a decision, there's usually a desire. Something you want, something that you're drawn toward, something you would love, something that you can feel before you know how it's going to happen. This is where the feminine and the masculine come into play in the conversation. And I'm not talking about men and women here. I'm talking about the feminine and the masculine principles and the masculine, feminine and masculine energy that we have available to all of us. The feminine energy, which is desire, it's vision, it's intuition, it's possibility, it's creativity. What wants to be expressed or experienced? What would you love? That's desire. The masculine is things like focus. It is decision. It's structure. It's action. It's boundaries. It's follow through. In a healthy relationship between the two energies, the masculine is working in service of the feminine. It's the steward that actually supports those dreams into actuality, into fruition. So the desire needs to come first, right? The feminine says, I want this. I want to create this. I want to experience this. I want more of this in my life. But it doesn't have a plan. Desire doesn't show up with a spreadsheet ready to make it happen. It may just simply be, this is what I want. And then what happens oftentimes is a disempowered masculine might come in and say, but how? We don't have the money. There's no time. It doesn't make sense. It's not responsible. It's not realistic. That's masculine energy, but it's in its disempowered state because it's actually cutting off the feminine. It's not honoring the desire, right? The very part of us that's supposed to help the desire become real is actually being used to shut the desire down. And that's backwards. That's why we must honor the desire. The job of the masculine isn't to tell the feminine what she's allowed to want. The job is to say, okay, if this is the desire, how do we honor it? Not, can I prove that this is possible before I let you want it? But if this is what we've chosen, what's the next step? The desire is what actually sets the direction, right? The decision then says, we're going this way. Now the masculine can do what it does beautifully when it's in an empowered state. It can create the plan. It can protect the time. It can make the tough decisions about saying no to things that it no longer wants to do. It can find the resources. It can establish the boundaries. It can take that action, even if it's a little scared to, and it can follow through. This brings me back to the word decide. Remember, it's to cut off. And earlier we talked about how decision cuts off all the other options. But I think this is an important distinction to make here. The decision doesn't cut off the desire. It cuts off the alternatives that are competing with the desire. And that's a completely different thing. If you have a desire to create something and you really decide, yes, this is where I'm going, then you begin cutting off the constant reconsidering. You cut off the option of doing nothing. You cut off the need for other people's agreement or approval. The idea that you'll only do it if it's convenient. You'll cut off the endless negotiation about whether or not your desire is valid. You do not cut off possibility. You cut off the things that keep you from giving your energy to the possibility that you have already decided. So desire without decision can stay a wish for a very long time, right? If you're saying, I would love to someday, wouldn't it be amazing if, those are all beautiful, but nothing has been asked of the masculine yet, right? There's no assignment or direction. There's nothing to organize around. Decision is what changes that. Now there's an assignment. This is what we're creating. Suddenly the questions will become more useful for you. You'll ask higher quality questions. Not a question like, is this realistic? Instead, the question will become something like, what would this require? The question will not be, do I have time? It would sound more like, where does this belong on my calendar? What do I need to say no to? The question is not, do I have the money for this? The question would be, okay, what needs to happen financially? How can I serve or sell or bring something out there of value? The masculine now has something to serve. On the flip side, the reverse is worth mentioning too. Decision without desire can be very dry. We can be incredibly disciplined and productive while building a life that we don't actually want. We can make all kinds of decisions based on what looks responsible or what will impress people or what we've already done. We can make it make sense on paper and never actually stop and ask, do I even want this? So we need both. Desire without decision doesn't move. Decision without desire may move us very efficiently in the wrong direction. But when the two are working together, the feminine says, this is what I desire. And the masculine says, let's go. Let's do this. This comes back beautifully to the friendly universe conversation. Because to honor a desire before you know exactly how it's going to happen requires trust. You may not know the entire path. You may not have the resources yet, but you're willing to take the desire seriously enough to make a decision around it. Not because you're guaranteed the outcome, but because you're willing to participate in the co-creation of it. So once again, back to Napoleon. Successful people are quick to decide, slow to change their minds. Maybe a part of that is simply that once the masculine has said we're going this way, it stays in service to the desire long enough to actually build something. It doesn't abandon the desire every time someone disagrees or fear shows up. New information can change the plan, but it may eventually change. It could actually even eventually change the decision, but your discomfort alone doesn't automatically take over. So I just want to invite you before we leave here today to consider, what desire have you been asking your circumstances to approve instead of allowing yourself to decide? And what would happen today if you took that decision-making power back? I've decided. Feel into that. If this conversation has been resonating for you, then maybe a decision you can make is to come join me over in the Flourish Field. That's my monthly membership, where you get the support as you step into your most empowered, most decisive self. The link with the details will be down in the show notes. Until next time, trust the desire, choose the direction, stand back and watch yourself flourish. Thank you for tuning in to the Flourish Frequency Show with me, Beth Larson. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and are leaving with a heart full of inspiration and a mind buzzing with the possibilities of more. Tune in every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more frequency boosting conversations. And if you want more help getting into your Flourish flow and stepping into the possibilities of more, you can find me at BethLarsonCoaching.com. That's BethLarsonCoaching.com, Larson with an E.